Should be here.
Okay. Call meeting to order.
A second.
Well done. Then we're gonna,
So first we just have to consider this is the meeting minutes.
Move to approve the meeting minutes of November 22, 2024.
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
There. And then, Rebecca or Bart, if you want to maybe kind of give us a quick overview of number 3 on the agenda. So talking about just getting an update on the RFP for parking lot development proposals, and that I guess we're actually making a recommendation about removing 3900 North Frederick Avenue from the RFP proposal. Is that correct?
correct. So, for purposes of the meeting today, we want to let you know that we met with all of the individuals and firms who submitted proposals. That was really helpful to the discussion, kind of to further flesh out our proposal and how we approached it. 2 of those proposals, as you know, are for the parking lot site here on Frederick. And during the scope of that meeting, that we had the joint CDA village board meeting, there was not, it didn't appear from the communication that we heard from that meeting that there was a majority sentiment to move forward with the lot. So one of the things that I want to just kind of clear the deck on is, do you want to continue with that site within the scope of the proposal? Because as we know, it's a rolling proposal. So people are going to ask Bart and I, well, should we submit on this or should we not? And one of the things that I want to work more on with the CDA and the board is being a good partner, which also means saying what you want. So if this is not going to be on the table for the near, in the immediate near future, let's take it off so that we can have properly advise people, because we don't want to waste people's time and have them focus on sites that we do want to work on, or continue to keep it in. And then we, can advise people that that's the recommendation in action. So this would be a recommendation from CDA to the board. We simply want to know, do you want to continue with that parking lot site within the scope of the proposal, or do you want to have us remove it? Because as I mentioned before, it's a rolling application cycle. So at the 15th of any month, anyone can submit. And then in your packet, wanted to provide you with the update from Spurl. We have not yet received the formal applications. But,
So sorry.
oh, yeah.
I left my bag somewhere here.
Oh,
I thought I did.
This is mine.
Oh, sitting here, there's a lot. Okay,
is it black bag?
it was a black bag.
Oh.
Okay.
When they have moved it out.
No, I came right after the meeting.
Gotcha. Well,
Nobody came.
I'm love my sincere.
Okay.
Yeah, we have that problem.
So whether it stays in, goes out, and then Spurl has, I asked him because he's been working on, moving forward with the process for an application. So I just wanted to, have him provide me that update in his own words. So that's just for informational purposes today. We're not going to be discussing the proposal or mechanics of it. But that was the update on that.
And just for mine and maybe other people's benefit, there were 2 or 3 parcels. There's just the
Oh,
2.
3.
Originally, there were 3 parcels, Oakland,
2 on
Right.
Oakland and Frederick.
2 on Oakland,
Mhm.
right? Because there's the 4300 block. And what was the other one?
The one by.
Oh, yeah, that's the Specter Field. And we did not get any proposals yet
Mhm.
about that.
Correct.
Yeah, right.
Oh, hey, I have a quick question. I'm sorry.
Parking lot there, but.
I'm really sorry if this like covers ground we've already covered because I walked in 5 minutes late. So from what I'm hearing, there was a sentiment at the village, it was a deadlock at the village board as to whether to move forward with a proposal on this site.
They didn't take any action, but we had a joint CDA and village board meeting where the developers presented to both groups. And then it was just feedback, non-binding. It was really educational. I will let you know, I think it was the best meeting we've had here. So the developers came in, they could have discussion about the site. CDA board members could ask questions. But when the board and the CDA gave feedback with regards to the Frederick site, which is the parking lot behind us, there didn't appear to be a majority, I would say, and you guys can characterize it or correct me, that were hip to move forward with redevelopment of this lot. And so we're coming back to this group to say, hey, do you want to put it in the proposal or not? How do you feel about it?
I guess my question, and kind of drilling down on my question is, isn't it really the board's call as to, I guess, why are we making the call as to whether to move forward with the site?
You aren't.
Shouldn't the board be the one, the board's gonna be the one ultimately approving or denying? Shouldn't they make the call ultimately?
Yes, so this would be a recommendation from the CDA only. Any action you take today is recommendation,
Okay.
both on this
I think
and,
to your point, why are we even recommending?
Yeah, 'cause it's
Why
kind of
why
like-
are they coming back to us?
Because we're recommending based on what.
Yeah, we're the
You
development,
hold weight
we're
with
the
the
development
village board.
authority, I think
We're not
that
meeting
we're.
for nothing, are we?
Right.
Right.
But
Why would
I
we
mean,
at all?
it's our job as the development authority to make the recommendation to the board is looking for our recommendation. And so I think that they're looking for us to give our opinion. I think that the board can decide to make, a decision either way, but I think that they're asking, what is our opinion? And they can say, great, we don't like your opinion and we'll do the opposite, or they can say, thank you, and we'll weigh your opinion and we'll do it, or we might not. But I think our opinion matters, and I think the board wants to know what we think.
this was also the recommending group on the proposal. So the proposal came here first, was reviewed, recommended to the board.
Okay, just,
We're going through
and
the-
again, I totally agree with you. I just want to make sure we're not saying like, we're making a recommendation based on what we think the board is thinking,
Nope,
as opposed to like, I just
Nope.
want to make sure it's based on, what we're thinking as we look at this. So
Yes.
Just wanted to,
Yeah.
sorry, this is all catch up for me, so.
Are you ready?
We can do that. We could do a
Sorry, what did you
motion.
say?
Do you want to do a motion now with discussion?
Sure.
We can do that.
That's it.
Yeah, that,
So if there's a motion in a second, then the group would discuss, and
okay,
then there'd be a vote.
all right, let's, yeah,
I move that we recommend to the village board that the 3900 North Frederick Avenue site be removed from the redevelopment of village-owned parking lot RFPs.
Second.
okay. I have a
I can
question.
just make a little discussion.
Oh, yes, go ahead.
This is what we also received besides the feeling among board members, which I would concur with what Rebecca said. This is also where we received the most feedback from residents was against development of this site. And so at this point, we have spent so much time, and it's time well spent, but staff time, our time, in fairness to people who may think about wanting to put an application, there has been a window of opportunity, and it's time to move on.
Okay.
I think the CDA should be on the side of advocating for things to be developed in the village, and if the village board decides that that's not in their interest, then they can make that decision. I don't think the village board or the CDA should be giving a recommendation to remove this site.
Yeah, I unfortunately was not at that meeting, so I don't have a lot of, other than reading the minutes. I don't know what some of the reasoning was for people being against development of the parking lot. Do we feel like it was good reasoning or just there was reasoning?
It's just very subjective,
Right,
very subjective.
yeah. I feel like we never really got very far in the process to know if it's a good thing or not. Maybe.
There's probably still a lot of education that needs to be done, because I think there's still a lot of residents that were concerned that they would never be able to get to the library ever again. They wouldn't be able to park in the slot anymore.
Right,
There's still a lot of misinformation that was kind of out there, so I think,
so is it maybe too early to
I think
cut this off?
I mean, I sit on kind of both boards here, and you would never close an opportunity, because you never know. Now might not be the right time, but in 2 years, 3 years, 6 months, it might be a great opportunity.
Well, that's sort of where I'm going with this is I don't want to spend a lot of staff time on it, but if we're not getting barraged by
Yeah, I think
by development proposals, I don't see the
I kind of
downside.
here's, I think the biggest sort of conflict here is that, there's the conversation about affordable housing and that lot. But yet, if there's going to be a public parking lot element of this lot right here, they're gonna have to they're gonna have to, create a parking lot underground, which is going to make the rents increasingly more expensive, in the unit, or the units more expensive in the development. So I think there's that conflict there where, it sounds great to have a covered, like, imagine if that was a covered parking spot, still all public on the first floor, that's a great opportunity. But if that's covered and you're going down and you're creating 100 or so more spots underground for residents, that makes the cost way, way higher. And I think then you get out of the affordable sort of territory. And then that becomes that kind of conflict there a little bit.
I would just also add, as one of the members who was at that board meeting, not every board member was present, and one of the members who was very, kind of surprisingly against the proposal, Jerry Lynn, is not going to be coming back. So boards change constantly. Every year there's somebody new. So I would prefer to just keep this as an option, and the opposition to it, there's going to be opposition to any proposal. It's just human nature. People don't like to see change in their community. And this was, very high profile. This was discussed for months and months, and we got 7 emails opposed to the project. And, a couple weeks later, there was a proposal to change the signage on the Oakley Trail to warn people not to bike so fast. That got 6 emails in like one day. So there's opposition, but this is not like the highest priority. I think that people are just dead set against any possible housing there. So I think we should be open to other proposals. Maybe something will come in that's smaller, or, something that's less objectionable to some people. So I just think we should keep an open mind. And it's always been my preference to show some urgency on building more housing. So I'm certainly biased in favor of getting something built there, but I wouldn't want to cut off, new proposals that might come in at some point.
Yeah, my head's a little bit there too. I mean, I'm certainly not saying that this is the kind of the easiest route or even the preferred route, or even a route I would support in any way. But I think at this point, given that we're not getting deluged by proposals, I don't know that I want to foreclose looking at things. Again, I don't know if this necessarily works, to be very clear, but as long as village staff doesn't feel like it's an overwhelming piece of the equation where we're getting a ton of stuff on this lot that's just not workable, I don't think I want to cut it off. I see some of Arthur's challenges Arthur Trustee Ursing points out too, which is, when you drill down and create parking underground, it inherently gets more expensive. So I think it's going to be problematic that way too. But again, I don't know that I want to take it off the table completely at this point in the process.
So, I guess if we're looking for affordable housing, which I think is a big part of the conversation, then it's not gonna be affordable housing, to your point. We're not gonna build affordable housing here. That's not gonna be.
I mean,
So it's
I
not
would say
gonna-
never say never.
Right,
Because
it's not gonna
there's
bring in
a lot of
affordable housing.
Well, there very well could
It-
be
it-
some,
you never know.
and I think people need to
But
remember.
probably not. It's
the laws
probably
of
not
supply and
gonna,
demand.
it's probably not gonna bring in affordable housing, which is what Trustee Ursing saying.
Well, we need more housing in general. I think everyone would
But it's-
agree.
but
that
there could be
housing
affordable components
prices,
to
and there
it,
could be
you know.
affordable
Probably
components.
not. I
So-
mean, the 2 new developments that just came in, neither one of them brought any affordable housing. You can all agree that that is the case.
Yes, but it doesn't
Yes, okay.
necessarily mean that doesn't help the affordable housing initiative, because building more housing, and I've become much more educated on this issue, and I am really starting to believe that the best, cheapest, and easiest way to deal with the affordable housing crisis is to build more housing, regardless of what kind of housing it is, high-end, medium, and low-end. And
But the two of
affordable.
the housing expert here is.
So,
building
That's
building more
pretty much
housing is
proven
not
as far as I'm
a
concerned
housing
by
issue.
the experts that
Like
we.
building more luxury housing in our community has that
I wouldn't
helped.
say it's necessarily luxury, but they're.
You could probably do some slab on grade, and it could be lower density that you could look at. That might kind of keep the neighborhood aesthetic intact if people are concerned about going upward. I don't know, I just looked at the lot, through the satellite, maybe you can get 3, 4, townhome type developments right there. Yeah, that way. Mhm. Yeah, and I'm sorry, I hadn't thought about that as an option for the land trust, but I do think, looking at it, it looks like it could be slab on grade, and then that could kind of keep some, costs down, because you're not going into the basement, and then you're also creating, maybe townhomes, and I don't know which developer would do it at the right cost, but I do think there are developers that are available to do something like that.
I think it comes down to them, the parking, we probably lose all this parking over here, and as
That
you
was a
see,
non-starter.
this parking lot is completely full right now. That's the biggest issue we have here, is we want to keep that parking intact. And if not upgraded by getting it covered, but, yeah, that makes it tough, but I think that's a great idea.
So what difference does it make in terms of the $2.1 million? We have something on the agenda later. We're looking at this now. I guess I'm wondering financially, if we make a decision later about the 2.1, that could really affect this, right? I mean, if the money's gone,
Conversely, if
For-
we make
for a
this
subsidy.
recommendation and the board shoots it down, and for say Brian's proposal, which is on the agenda, and they turn that down, we don't have this lot to vote. I came prepared to vote to be done with it, but hearing your position seemed reasonable. And if they did village board vote down the thing on Oakland, then we'd have one site left. So
I mean, there's no use in, there's no reason why we just can't keep this open and see what comes in. I mean, it's not harming anybody. There might be a proposal that just blows everybody away. It's not, I'm not ready to close the door on that, even though I haven't seen anything that I would personally, move forward with.
To that point, I mean, I think it's challenging in a lot of ways, this lot. I think it's challenging in terms of the parking that we lose. I think it's challenging in terms of some community feedback that we've received. All that said, I'm not adverse to keeping the RFP open at this stage, just in case something comes in that we don't see. I'm not an expert in this space. Am I optimistic that this is going to be the lot, or that I would even support that? No, not necessarily, but I don't have a problem with keeping the RFP open, I guess, at this stage.
to me, it's just a distraction. It seems to me that after 4 years of this, it's time to really focus in on what's a reasonable thing for us, for our staff, and for us to do with $2.1 million. And it would help us focus. To me, I just don't see it happening. And so let's focus on what we know we can do. And, it seems to me, it's just part of the winnowing process.
But-
Decision making.
But what we can do is not a CDA decision. What we can do is a village board decision.
I'm just saying, as a CDA, I think we should recommend that we focus on the things that really seem to be rolling. We have things rolling here that I think could get some momentum and be flushed out and possibly come to development. And I just don't see any merit to keeping it open when I think it's dead in the water. For the purpose.
Can I call the question?
purposes,
I mean-
yeah.
Yeah, so we have a motion on the table. I think, does anyone else have any significant
Nothing to
discussion? Anything else to add? Everyone's kind of said their opinion. The motion was, to recommend not to continue. So, I think we can keep that motion on the table
To remove.
to not. Two reasons. Double negative. Sorry, not to confuse everybody anymore. So the motion is to remove 3900 Frederick from the proposal. So if you're going to vote on that, I think we can do that at this point. Yes?
Mhm.
All right,
Would you mind if we did it by roll call, just so we can record it correctly?
sure,
Yes.
yeah.
Because everyone says it all at once and then you never go. Okay. Let's age.
I vote to keep it open. Based upon what I
So you
heard
don't
today.
vote no.
Vote no.
Okay.
John Kraus, I would say no.
Say yes.
I say no.
Nay.
Nay.
Okay.
5-2. Or 2-5, well, fails.
There you go. Okay,
Okay, that was really, and thank you, that was good discussion, and I do think,
Yeah.
in general, I really do, kind of feel strongly that the more we have available to talk about, the better. And it's a good problem to have, that we have sites that, challenging or not, could potentially help put more housing in the village in some way, shape, or form at some point in the future. So hopefully, I think we can always revisit this, but, staff can keep us updated on, where we're at, but hopefully this isn't much of a distraction. It doesn't seem like it should be. And we can still walk and chew gum at the same time and look at other proposals on other properties, so. Good. Next item on the agenda is to look at the land trust property option for extending the kids funds.
again, this is a recommendation only to the village board. Because they've asked us to take a look at how to utilize these funds. And so the discussion at the end of the last meeting was to have everybody present, get a vote on that recommendation and send it to the board so that we didn't continue to explore things that, right, we're whittling down the path in terms of what we're going to consider or not at this point. And a thank you for Levon
Thank you for being here.
Thanks.
and sharing all the time. It's been really productive.
So in this, we're looking to just provide a recommendation to the board to continue to see if this is a viable option, right? Because there's nothing on the table.
Correct.
There's
Right.
no property on the table.
The next steps would put us into motion of like putting something together. So we're not gonna spend the time to do that unless we know that there's a consensus from this group as a CDA and the board to move forward in that direction.
So the next steps would be looking for, was it like a duplex in the neighborhood of 430,000? Is that what I?
That's what was used for purposes of analysis, and that property was actually on the market at the
Yeah.
time, right? Could be any other
100%.
property like that, but that's what was
Okay.
used.
I
And
quoted 3 years of sold duplexes and what was currently available, and that's a pretty reasonable number.
Okay.
Get a whole number.
And how much, someone could remind me, what amount of money of the TID funds were gonna be needed to do that? Was it,
The estimate was 250,000 per.
right,
duplex.
so to do one,
Yeah.
roughly 250,000,
Yes.
which still leaves a large chunk of the funds.
2.1 million.
Minus.
Potentially.
Are we opening discussion?
Yeah.
there's no motion on the
Well,
table.
I'd like to go
Yeah,
first.
would you like to make a motion?
I'd like to discuss it. I didn't come loaded for a bear, but I kind of spent the most time on it. I looked at the
Well,
data.
why don't we, why doesn't someone make a motion?
I make a motion to discuss. Is that what it would be?
No.
Uh,
Recommend or
You'd be
not recommend.
Right.
If you'd be making a motion to recommend, assuming you're in favor of the proposal, you move to recommend, in a second, and then we discuss it. Page 8 of the packet.
Oh my.
So are you in favor of, I'd say I move the CDA, to recommend to the village board, that the village board pursue a land trust property and request allocation of TID 1 extension funds for this purpose.
I'll second.
Okay,
Sorry.
now,
I don't.
now we
discuss. Okay.
So I recommended it, so there's a recommendation, it's been
I
recommended.
did watch the videos. I mean,
That's all good. Oh, boy, those videos. Take away from those videos.
Thank you, Bill.
So it's been recommended, so.
okay, I got it. I did ask Rebecca for what our purview was here, why we're here, and I'll just recap that because it was useful for me in understanding how to orientate myself towards this decision. The purpose of the CDA includes the provision of affordable housing in the village, an increase in the village's tax base, and the stimulation of flow of investment capital into the village with resultant beneficial effects upon the village, economy in the village. Those are 3 things. feel like the land trust accomplishes one of those. And this is difficult because I like Lamont and I really like what you're doing, and I think it's worthwhile. I, however, am not certain it's a great fit in this community, just because of the specific demographics we have, how expensive the housing is. And looking deeper at some of the data, some of the duplexes we would be looking at in that data was the rent numbers. And they qualified as affordable housing as they as they exist. So we would be taking properties off the tax roll to provide affordable housing. Those properties potentially already have affordable housing in them. We would be losing the tax base we would be bringing, if we were to use our TIF money to do that, we would be doing it. It's not in a vacuum. It would be at the expense of not doing development. In my mind, new development increases the tax base, does three of these things. It provides affordable housing. It increases stimulates the flow of capital here, and it builds more housing. To John's point, I think we need more housing. That releases some of the pressure on all parts of the market. And to remove housing from the free market causes all the others properties to be more in demand and potentially to go up. So for those reasons, I would be opposed to using it for land trust.
Okay, thanks, Joe. Any other comments?
I would echo that, and I'm just so grateful that you worked with us on this. And I kept thinking that it was really important to provide an opportunity to gain equity and helps families move forward in the village in a way besides rental. But I don't see, having been on the CDA when we approved the 2.1 million set aside and the village board, I don't see that the voters at that point gave me a license to take property off the tax roll in perpetuity. It didn't come up. It was never discussed as something like that. And I would echo what he says about working on adding instead of subtracting.
And one clarification, that the property would still be taxed, it just would be taxed at the valuation, which would be considerably less than market value. It would be taxed at what the person could realize at sale. So if they were to buy the unit at $150,000, they would pay taxes on a $150,000.
It was my understanding that the land would be.
The land would be exempt from taxation.
No tax on it.
Yeah, but the house and the improvement would still pay taxes.
Not totally loss of tax, but
A decrease.
some.
I do like the in perpetuity affordable housing. I think that's an advantage over kind of hoping that the market rate housing continues to be affordable, especially because I don't think most of the affordable market rate housing is really people getting the most out of their units. For example, I rent out my unit at $1,500 a month. It's a 3-bedroom, 1.5 bath. I know I could get more money. I just, and
So you're not doing it because personal choice.
yeah. And so I think that a lot of those units that appear to be affordable are only affordable based on some other choice people are making other than maximizing their income. And I don't know if that will always be true.
It is a unique situation in the village that I've noticed, and Joe, you noticed that rents do not follow value in this community like they do everywhere else. I don't know why.
So when you say value, I'm not.
Meaning, so
My house has gone up
So, you know, a duplex now is
3 years or whatever.
$500,000-$600,000.
But landlords are not
Rents should be
proportionally raising.
$2,500 to $3,000 a month per unit on those duplexes. They're not.
But that could be
They're
someone who
still-
says, I have a good renter and I don't want to lose them.
That's what he's saying.
Well, I don't know what I mean,
Sort of,
there's
not in
lots
a
of,
way.
I think there's a number of reasons why people do it.
I have my own opinions, but they're truly just opinions. And I think part of the reasoning is a lot of people that own duplexes and rental properties in Milwaukee do it because or in Shorewood, is because it's a super, super safe investment. And they care less about revenue and cash flow than they do about having their money in an asset that's super safe and that's going to predictably appreciate. And I've never understood that because that's not how I buy property. As a developer and as a real estate investor, you look at the market and you say, well, if I can get 3.5%, 4% in a savings account, why am I going to buy a duplex that gives me a 2% return? It doesn't make a whole lot of sense because it's way more risky compared to putting my money in a savings account. But yet, that's the majority of the housing stock in Shorewood is bought that way. So could it remain that way? Maybe. It's been that way for 15 years as far as I've been following the market here. I don't get it. I don't know why that is the case. I don't know why you can still rent a 3-bedroom duplex 2 blocks from Lake Michigan for $1,800 a month, but you can in this village, and that's great. But I do really think that the way to make to keep housing affordable here, if we really do have the demand that's driving it, is to add a lot more units of varying types of housing, because that will just keep things in check. Because if we don't add any housing and the demand goes up, we all know what's going to happen. If Shorewood becomes a place where everyone wants to live,
Kind of is.
it is, well, it is and it isn't, right? Because if it was, rents for your apartment would be $3,000 a month or more.
You probably could put it to $3,000 a month and people would still rent it.
Probably, it depends on what it is, but yeah. I'm really on the fence with this one because that argument kind of cuts both ways. The fact that rents are low, so you're not, by doing the land trust option, you're not really adding affordable housing is one argument. But the past is not a guarantor of the future. The fact that, if everyone decided to just raise rents tomorrow, you'd probably still be within the market and all of a sudden this would make sense. So I guess it kind of cuts both ways for me of what we're talking about, because there's no reason that landlords have to keep the rents artificially low in Shorewood. They certainly could raise the rates to market, at any point in time. Then all of a sudden land trust would look more attractive. That said, it might not be because the rates are lower than we would expect them to be.
No one can prognosticate the future that well. I'd say that was 10% of my point I was trying to make, was that they already exist. It is a fact, we would take probably 2 units of affordable housing off the market and create those same 2 units at a decent cost and lower the tax rolls. A lot of sentiment has been expressed about concern about our tax base because of all the expenses coming up. So I took that into account as well. So it's not just to evaluate just the duplexes here and what might happen with the rent in the future, but absent that, you've created millions of dollars worth of real estate somewhere else that's paying taxes. So for me, that accomplishes all 3 goals.
I just have a question. So in terms of staff capacity here, going forward with a land trust, if we would do that, you had said that your organization, we're looking at like a year or so. You're mostly in the city now, possibly going to TOSA. So you could start helping us in later 2025. I'm just wondering, going forward, what would this require of our staff? Because we all know how big the money pot is, right? But what about the staff time? What going forward versus building a building? That's what I'm looking at. Like we're not Wauwatosa, we're not the city. We've got 2 people here doing a lot of work. And we've got a lot of things going on.
I think the biggest staff draw would be on the assessor, getting the methodology, the assessment established, setting in place a procedure for year after year of how that property is to be taxed. It's similar to setting up like an HOA. I'm not sure how long that takes someone to do
So it
that.
would be an HOA with the village?
Yeah, I would just to get in your mind, I think that's the closest thing that they would have to kind of set up. this system similar to how they would monitor HOA. And that may not take long at all. That might be something that has the bandwidth to kind of do it because they've done it. Really, they just would have to monitor the property. And I'm not thinking that that's a big draw on staff time.
So like our village planning department does inspections and stuff. Is that what you're saying? No.
No, they wouldn't need to do any inspections, but I guess just thinking about the village and where time would be spent. I'm just saying the assessor, whoever does the assessment may spend the most time at this.
And we contract that out, so. So it could be nothing.
Sorry.
I think for me, my struggle is I really feel conflicted because I really love the idea that this is building some sort of generational wealth for some people. And that idea of affordable housing, to me, that's what affordable housing really feels like it should be. I don't love the idea of subsidizing housing in any other way. That is what I feel like affordable housing really should do. And so that is what got me most excited about this possibility of affordable housing. But taking this off the tax roll has definitely been a struggle for me. Knowing too, though, that we have these major infrastructure needs and knowing how expensive these infrastructure needs that are coming and how expensive they're going to be for our residents are also really challenging. And so I feel like this is like this hard balance. And so I also wonder, like, how do we balance that if we're talking about, like, I guess, and this is maybe sort of more of a Rebecca question, because I think there's a possibility like some of these funds could be used for infrastructure, right? And what can we do to sort of alleviate some of our residents' pains? Because, I mean, this is a regular issue, you know, how do I live here, you know, and how do I keep Shorewood affordable for the people who live here? And how can we do both, I guess, is sort of.
Can because I sort of wasn't planning to vote up or down. My actual intention today was to vote, having read Brian's proposal. I thought we're voting on that. It leaves him, if he pays $1 for that land, it leaves enough in there to do his proposal and either return $400-some-thousand for infrastructure from these funds, or to leave the door open if there was political will for it, to do Lamont's land trust, to do both. I mean, there's no reason we couldn't do a duplex or 2 duplex and his proposal on open or return some of the money. If Brian were to succeed in getting that 950,000 as he put in his email, that would leave the ability to do quite a bit more. So I don't actually necessarily want to vote to say no to that, but that's what was put on the agenda. But if I'm forced to, that's what I would vote. But I'd rather leave that open, approve his, and then leave the door open to doing that and or returning the money to the village for the infrastructure.
But I don't think that's agenda for today.
It was supposed to be.
No, it wasn't.
Oh.
Yeah,
That's what I said at the last meeting, like, let's stop kicking this down the road for another year.
I didn't know Brian was gonna submit a proposal at the last meeting.
Okay.
You have a better crystal ball than I do.
So just for the point of information, will we be talking to them today?
No, I mean, you can ask them questions if it's within the purview under the chair, but their proposal's not being evaluated today. We haven't done any review on it.
In session?
We can talk in broad strokes about, I think,
Yeah,
just as we're evaluating him with broad strokes, I feel like that's fair.
yeah, but we want to go too far down the road though, because it's not on the agenda.
Not a
so-
right.
If there's like some point of clarification you need, but we're not here to dive into. I provided this information for understanding, right? Because we had wanted an update on where we were with the proposals. So I felt it was important that you knew where they were, right? But we're not considering that proposal at this meeting. When it comes back to you, it's gonna come back to after, you know, he's reviewed it, then it's gonna go through the policy 40 process. So, and helpful hint, I actually like put like the possible motions. I'm just giving you a hard time. Only because then like it helps focus people. You don't have to make those motions if you don't want to, but Like for purposes of today, we just want to know. And they were just kind to be here because I know that they submitted the information. And so they did, want to be available if there was anything that could be clarified.
So I am definitely on the fence with this, but I'm leaning a little bit more now during some of this discussion towards recommending that this does move forward. Mostly what's pushing me over the edge is I'm curious to see if it works. I am curious to see, it's a small investment relative to everything else we're talking about. And if we can build a lot more housing in this village over the next 5-10 years, increase the tax base, this type of thing will have less of an impact. If we can identify a few duplexes. I mean, this isn't going to be a huge factor in providing affordable housing in the village, but it is a unique thing. It's relatively new. And it sounds like it's not a big burden on anyone within the village. Not really established once the board decides to move forward. So I guess I'm inclined to at least keep trying to figure this out. But I definitely don't want it to be something that takes our eyes off the prize of ultimately doing something more significant with building more housing and providing more affordable housing and keeping housing affordable in the village, because we do have some huge expenses coming up. And that is going to be challenging to deal with. I guess
I'm sorry, I would just say, and maybe I'm wrong to correct me. I don't know that it's new. I mean, I think it's maybe just newer here. I mean, there's like, especially in the south, like it's been happening for
new
quite
in this
some time.
region
Yeah.
of
Like
the
it's
country,
definitely not a new
definitely for
concept.
us.
Yes.
It's new. And we're a progressive community. I think this sort of thing makes sense. I'm not opposed to it on principle at all. And it's relatively small in terms of time, money, effort. So I guess I'm leaning.
I mean,
towards
it's definitely a concept that has been, proven and worked well and like in Durham and then, other communities has done very well. And been successful in many other communities.
Yeah, sometimes what you see is that when affordability leaves, then people like the land trust option because it brings the affordability back, but they don't usually like it when there isn't the affordability issue. And that's because the gap between what the market allows and what the land trust is providing is so narrow that sometimes the cost benefit is not as obvious. We have that same kind of issue in Milwaukee, where you can buy a unit on the market for 100,000. We're taking these same units, greatly rehabbing them, getting them to turnkey ready, but then we're selling them at 67,000. So sometimes people don't see the value of taking the land trust with the restrictions for only a $33,000 reduction in their price. But Milwaukee's a little bit different. That same unit at 100,000 won't sell for much more than 100,000 in the neighborhoods that we're targeting. Plus the unit is run down, it's gonna need a new roof, it's gonna need new furnaces. So, but people don't see that. They just see the money part of it. Yes, the equation, but I would just say, this is a great way to make sure that there is a mechanism for affordable housing in the future. And then the affordable housing numbers are gonna be much less than what a 30-unit affordable housing project is going to look like. I think you have the ability for that landlord to kind of act like you do in a land trust home, where they may say, hey, my rent only needs to be $800 because my mortgage is only $1,000. So I do think there are some opportunities to kind of bake in and get this land trust going while costs are low, versus 20 years from now, and duplex costs 700,000 and you're trying to implement this program, then it gets to be more challenging.
So you're saying duplexes, the cost of duplexes now is low?
not low, but lower than the future cost is what I guess I'm saying.
I guess kind of putting a stake in the ground myself, you know, on this, it's a really, I'm very much on the fence here. It's a really close call. But I guess I'm leaning no here, just because of the limited help within, I see the benefit of these types of land trusts, but within our community, it seems to provide a limited benefit. In addition to the fact, you know, to Jessica's point, the impact on the tax base, and we have all these infrastructure projects that are taking place over the next few years. It just seems like there might be better options out there. So again, it's a really close call and a really interesting idea, but my lean right now is it's no.
Can I just get a point of clarification? So Jessica brought up the idea of generational wealth. Can you talk a little bit about that and how the, you know, property owner, you know, what that looks like for them if they were to sell in the future? Because I was under the impression that that wasn't the case, but maybe I'm
What homeowners agree to is a limited appreciation, and generally that appreciation is going to be somewhere between 1.25% and 2%. We would have to set the appreciation
Per year,
based on the purchase price, not the market price, but the purchase price that they buy. So let's say they buy a unit at 100,000, and we agree that they can appreciate 1.75%. So at the end of that year, they would have, they can sell that unit for $101,750. And over 10 years, it would be something like 17,000. So in 10 years, they can sell this unit for 117,500. They bought it for 100,000.
Yeah.
And in that process, they paid the mortgage down as well, so that also.
Probably came with down payment assistance, they've been paying the mortgage down.
Yeah.
So when they walk away, they may walk away with $40,000-$50,000.
Yeah.
But the beauty is that that new price point in 10 years of 117,500, we don't have to increase that. We don't go off the market, that becomes a new price for the next buyer, and it just continues on in perpetuity that way. So you create a permanent stock of affordable housing. You never have to go back to recapitalize. We're not going to be a developer that comes in 20 years and say, hey, we need another 100,000 and kind of spruce up the duplex that you left us with 20 years ago. We keep a capital reserve, so folks would be paying a monthly amount toward capital improvements, $50 or whatever we decide. So at the end of 10, 20 years, they have money to repair the roof or put a new furnace in. So there's some sustainability pieces that makes it more attractive as a affordable housing project than other affordable housing projects.
Right.
So then besides taking the land off the property tax roll, you're also taking off the market rate increase in value because you're determining what that resale price will be.
Yeah.
So
The
there's two
property
ways that,
taxes on that property are gonna be significantly less than what they normally.
than the one
would
right
be.
next door.
Yeah, right.
You know, I will throw out that, kind of like this, the first topic, this is not something that I would like to, do away with, one way or the other. I think it's reasonable to try to keep this kind of in our repertoire as we move forward. I would hate to say, I made the motion to recommend, but I'd hate to say yes or no to this right now and not have this be a viable option moving into the future. I know, as a village board, we were also having the discussion about what would it look like if, I know we have a pot of $2.1 million sitting there for affordable housing, but we've also, thanks to Trustee Stokebrand, we've also found sort of I don't want to say a loophole, but an opportunity to use some of that money to offset some of the infrastructure costs, which are massive right now. So that's also a conversation piece we're having at the village board level right now. So if we were to use, I think you can use 25% of that, $2.1 million towards infrastructure, which we were thinking about laterals, other things in this community, so that is that was voted down at our last meeting, but it's not going to go away. We're going to still keep having that conversation. And
What was voted down? Using part of the 2.1 for infrastructure?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But I think all the trustees are.
25, for all intents and
The
purposes.
trustees are open to the concept. I don't think everybody was a hard no, but they wanted to kind of, I think everything's up in the air right now. So
Was that because you think that people still wanted to see it used for affordable
Yeah.
housing? Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, so, it was a hard vote for, I think, a lot of us, I voted in favor, with trustee Sokran to potentially utilize that money to offset some of the costs in our community, because, we're asking residents a lot right now, and I feel like, these are both very important topics, but there's a big stressor on the community with the raising taxes for the infrastructure, and I thought this would be helpful, help to offset some of those costs. But so just saying that there's a lot going on, it's really dynamic. Hate to take anything off the table, because let's say we do move forward with that, and then it hurts the idea of developing something bigger. We could probably still take some of that money to do some of this as well. So just say there's a lot of moving pieces, and it's kind of a dynamic situation. Hate to take anything off the table. So I voted to recommend, but I feel like, I hate to remove this as a concept fully.
Yes.
So, I know we kind of like draft up motions, so it makes it easier for you guys when you come to a point to make a motion, but there's also, from a plan mode, right? So I'm looking at what we're gonna do immediately in 2025. And if I need to turn around and talk to you the next day about an agreement for CLT, right? That's really kind of where I'm at. So if you guys had a motion, like it's possible for you to say, not right now, but can we pause and revisit this at a different point in time? You can do whatever you'd like with that recommendation. It just doesn't have to be so binary,
So-
right?
There's a motion and a second on the table. We could vote on that, and then if we can, create another motion to,
Yeah.
Or you could just pull the motion, then we could move to table, I guess, would be. I mean, that would, I'm trying to read the tea leaves to what.
Typically, if you're gonna table, you're gonna revisit it at another point in time. So you'd specify to me when you want me to pull it back up. But we can proceed in any number of, I just don't want to give you the impression that if you say yes or no right now, much like the utilization of affordable housing funds for LSL purposes, it's gonna be something you're gonna be having additional conversations about in the future.
Yeah. And to be clear, the motion is a recommendation to the board.
Correct.
right,
So in that way, I feel like it wouldn't be bad to just, if we approve this motion, it's putting it to the authority, the board authority that needs to then make a decision. So the board can decide.
Yeah.
To table it, to hold it, kick it back to us. Whatever.
exactly.
So I guess in that sense, I'm likely going to approve this, because unless everyone is dead set against this idea, which it does not sound like that is the case. A lot of fence sitting, which makes sense. I mean, I'm fence sitting myself. But, we're all leaning one way or another, but so that seems to me.
I can see some merit to deferring the tabling, because we would have an opportunity for things to shake out. Staff right now has so much to do looking to the lead service laterals. We have to find a new way to finance capital, how to redo our equipment. We have to find a new way to fund that. And we're getting into the long range plan. We got the lights.
It would also give us an opportunity to see what happens with some
Exactly.
other stuff.
And I
that's on the
think I'm
table.
just not ready to make a recommendation to the board as a CDA member until some more puzzle pieces fall in line. And I'm thinking after the budget next year, seriously.
I might call it back a little earlier, but I agree with what trustee Zuckerman said. I think that I'd like to see one more puzzle pieces. If I had to vote today, I'd probably vote nay, but I would also be open to saying, let's revisit it after a few more puzzle pieces line up and see where we are.
So I suggest October,
Is there a timeline?
just
on
letting you know.
Is
Like if
there-
you're gonna look at it before budget,
Like we're looking at public work sites. I mean, it's too much. It's too much.
Is there a timeline on this money? Do we have to use it by a certain time, or just?
Sooner's probably, it's been sitting there for a while, but that's.
but just so you're all aware, communities who have extended it sits for a while. Like there are some communities where it's out there for like 8 years.
It's not an easy decision, as you
No.
see, like, we're trying to do the right thing, not just throw money away.
That they're annexing, right? I mean, we have nowhere to go.
Yeah.
Right, we have,
It's
this is
more
one
complicated.
1.5 square miles, and So it's much easier for other communities.
Yeah.
Agreed,
Right.
and you guys have been extremely thoughtful about your approach. So when I guess when I hear people say like, oh, you haven't used the money, I'm like, wow, I see a bunch of people who have been stewards of this funding and how to best do it. And many times to get to the best solution, you're eliminating things that don't work well for your repertoire or revisiting when it seems appropriate. So, maybe that would be my talking point for all of it.
I'd object to that. I
Well-
was specific with the last meeting, like, all we voted on today again is just to keep all our options open and defer. And I said at the last meeting, we have seen enough. Everyone knows what they think. We have seen these proposals. Like, how long can you kick the can down the road? Like, we have to make some decisions at some point. I mean, I thought we would be making a decision based upon land trust versus development, which way to go. I guess maybe I was mistaken. And when I said that it didn't show up on the agenda. It's just whether or not to say no to him and his concept. That's, no one wants to say no to everything, but we should have to at some point say yes to something. So how do we get that in process other than kicking it till October, which just to me seems.
I mean, I think a yes vote on this is just bringing it up to the village board and then we as a village board have that discussion and move forward with what one way or the other. So I mean, if you vote to recommend, it'll come to us at some point in the near future, next meeting, and then next meeting?
Not Monday,
Next meeting.
yeah, 'cause the agenda.
Yeah. So then we would have that discussion at the village board level and figure out where to go from there. So.
All right. I guess I'd just say that along with new development, I think this puts the village in a better position to do this. And I think our major role in the CDA is to put things in front of the board that help. And it's up to the village board to decide what is the best of those options. And I think this is an option that would be good. Whether it's the best is. Okay.
All right. We have a motion on the table to recommend that the village board pursue, correct?
Yep.
I think I would like to vote on that.
Well, you need to, because I believe it's seconded.
Yeah, no, I know.
Right.
At this point, no more discussion.
Yeah, we
unless
have
Yeah.
I would like to move forward. Everyone's.
If
okay
it,
with
and if
that?
it fails, you can make another motion. If it passes, then we'll see it at the village board in two
Right.
meetings.
And I'm only gonna vote no because I would like to see it deferred.
Yeah. All right.
You can
Because
vote no, you
Can
can
we-
vote no at the next meeting, at the village board meeting.
Why, we have a lot
I
of
know.
things on our plate.
I know.
Why should we take up something that we have we did our village board job is to put it in context and it's too much.
Yeah. So, yeah,
I'm
To recommend the village board pursue a land trust property and allocation of TID funding in general. The recommendation is to have the village board pursue the concept.
A land trust property and request allocation.
yeah, maybe we should do another roll call.
And we are not being specific as to how much, it's just, okay, it's a pretty broad
Yes.
recommendation.
Generally, should they look at it or not?
Mhm.
So we're basically, the
Okay.
motion is that they should.
Okay.
Passing it up that we approve that they should at least look at it.
It also doesn't have a timeline on it.
So does that mean staff would jump on this or not? If we vote yes, if it passes,
Then it goes to the board,
Right.
then you guys as a board have the
Accept the
discussion,
discussion and the board can make that decision.
and then
You
the
guys-
board makes the
yeah.
decision.
Then it's up to the
Yeah.
board. Everyone clear?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's my.
I'm clear.
Should we need to ask a question?
where do you live?
Absolutely.
I don't live in Shorewood.
All right,
Does policy 40 play into this? Don't they have to apply for the money?
So while policy 40 would be a part of that process, it wouldn't be for purposes of a development. We would need to look at it, and this is one of the things we acknowledged at the beginning. It would be an allocation of the funds, but they're not, policy 40 never contemplated community land trust. So as we take a look back at it, that's something that would need to be reviewed.
But aren't they asking for the TID money?
We're discussing whether or not we want to partner with them to do it.
Right.
They did not approach us to
We approached
ask for
them.
money
How does that matter? What difference does it make?
in terms of application. He's just saying,
Our application is a $5,500 non-refundable fee, and there's a specific process where we're asking for the TIP funds. And if another entity is also asking for the TIP funds, do they also have to be follow the policy 40 rules?
he's here as a resource for their conversation. He wasn't here as requesting or asking for money.
Yes, isn't this the village, the village is directly doing it, so it's not an application because it's the village proper. If that makes sense.
They
It's not a
sought him out.
developer.
We sought him out as a resource, to say, does this work here? Does it not? Is this something that the CBA wants to?
That this is something the village is doing essentially internally. It's not,
Yeah,
it's not an external entity developing.
You know, we don't have a monetary ask currently today.
Correct, right? It's either we choose to put in the money or we don't.
You're a nonprofit, you're a for-profit, right?
Yes.
But good question.
I just wanted to mention that the motion as written is regarding a property, singular. And
Yes.
I believe you read that verbatim,
Yes.
but then when people were discussing, are we ready to vote? It sounds like you think you're voting on the general concept of.
To pursue land trust property and request
A property, not.
land trust property.
Not the overall concept of.
Pursue
doing
a
bunch
land
of
trust property. Yeah.
Not a bunch of land.
One property.
A parcel.
That's what's in front of us right now.
Yeah.
Yes.
A property. So.
That's a good clarification.
I mean, it's gonna go to the village board and this thing could change, you know, the language could change overnight, what the village, I mean, it'll come to us as this, I assume, at the village board. I mean, it's not gonna be the village CDA recommended a land trust, but then we're asking for multiple properties. This is what's gonna come in for us.
Which could fit together funding wise very well. Because our ask plus one land trust property pretty much adds up to 2.1. And if there's a slight difference, the purchase price of the Oakland property could be adjusted accordingly. So us plus one land trust could work real nice.
There you go.
Okay,
Okay, we're ready to call it?
yeah.
The Sage,
Come on, no.
Kraus,
Aye.
Stillfriend,
Nay.
Alvin.
Aye.
There's no L in your name.
No.
I am so sorry. Offing. Been spelling it wrong for the last year. Carpenter. Yes.
Aye.
Warren.
Nay.
4-3. Wait, no, there's not.
Yeah, 4-3.
Is it 4-3?
I have Open, Carpenter, Kraus, and Ursink as yes. 4-3.
I always.
You did something. Well, you didn't. This is your chance to do something. You said no. You wanted something to be done and you're like, no, I don't want that to be done. No, I don't want that to be done. That was a symbolic. I knew where it was going, so.
Yeah, all right.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Right.
Great discussion. Thank you for all your time. Oh, but Mitch wants your input.
Yeah, is that part of the meeting or not?
No, your turn.